Welcome to the Membership Guys podcast. Kick-ass advice and tips for membership site owners.
Well, hello there. Welcome to episode 137 of the Membership Guys podcast. I'm your host, Mike Morrison, and I am so grateful that you've chosen to spend part of your day with me. I truly appreciate each and every one of you for listening. If this is your first time joining me for the podcast, be sure to hit that subscribe button in iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever it is you're listening to the show from. Hit subscribe to make sure you don't miss a single episode. Today's show is a very special one. We are joined by a three-time guest, a returning visitor to the show, the one and only Mr. Chris Ducker. So this is the third time that Chris has been on the show, and that's something we have a little bit of a joke about and a chat about at the beginning of our conversation. But the great thing is that if you listen to the interviews with Chris, almost in order, you get this evolving case study of what's actually happening with his Youpreneur membership in relation to things like his live events and now his brand new book that he's come on the show to have a little talk about. So rather than this just being a bit of a fluff piece about how great the book is, which, well, honestly, it is, I actually took the opportunity to dive a little bit more into what this new book is going to do for Chris as a membership site owner and how the membership has played a role in writing the book and vice versa. So there's lots of really useful stuff to glean from this. And Chris gets real open, real transparent about how things currently stand with the Youpreneur membership and the whole Youpreneur ecosystem. So I know you're going to get a huge amount of value from this, so let's jump right into my conversation with Chris Ducker. Okay, so I'm joined today by my fellow Englishman, founder of the Youpreneur.com membership community and author of the brand spanking new book, Rise of the Youpreneur. Chris Ducker, how the devil are you?
I'm good. I'm rising up, Mike, and you've been rising up for many a month as well. But no, I'm feeling good, man. It's good to be back on the show. What is this, number 3, I think?
It is, number 3. You know, you may actually have been on the show more times than Callie has now. Like,
I so wrong in so many different ways.
Yeah, I don't even dare to check whether that's right. I think you're at least tied for appearances. Okay. It's got to be right. She comes on once a year for the anniversary show to remind people that she's the one who actually does all this work. And I think we've done like one live Q&A recording as well. So I think you are now tied with Callie. But she's got her own podcast now. She's off doing her thing, living it up as a superstar podcaster. I'm the lesser show now, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Well,
I have to say that to placate her, so you know.
Of course you do. You're a smart man.
All right, so the last time we saw each other was at Youpreneur Summit in London just a few months ago, which was just an absolutely awesome event. And, you know, even though you had speakers like Pat Flynn, Johnny Dumas, John Jans, and, of course, yours truly, I've got to say probably the highlight, or certainly something a lot of people were talking about, was that little surprise you had for everyone at the end of day one, where each and every single person in that room, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of entrepreneurs, they got their hands on an advanced copy of your new book, Rise of the Youpreneur. So thankfully, I've had a good couple of months to read and to reread the book, but now it's available for everyone, right? Now it's not just that select group of people. It's available on Amazon, everywhere books are sold. So first off, congrats. It is a cracking book. That's not just me blowing smoke up here. It's a definite must read. Yeah. Definite must read.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? Let's just throw out any questions. Let's just have like a love in. Let's just be me just telling you over and over how great it is. But no, it is genuinely, I think it's something that will, I'm positive, become a must read for anyone doing any form of online business. So when I finished the first time around, I thought, even though you've been on a couple of times before, I've just got to get you back on the show because I want to ask you about where this all sits and how everything comes together between your book and your membership. But before we kind of dive into that stuff, for anyone who wasn't fortunate enough to get their hands on a copy at Youpreneur Summit, can you let our listeners know just a little bit about what Rise of the Youpreneur is all about?
Sure. So, I mean, you know, let's handle, you know, the big kind of 800 pound silverback gorilla in the room and answer the question, what is a youpreneur? A youpreneur is somebody that is building a business based around them, their personality, their experience, what they stand for, what they want to be known for, and the people that they want to serve and sell to. That is a youpreneur. Mike, you are a youpreneur. In fact, I would go on record to argue quite heavily about the fact that almost every membership community on the planet, in regards to sort of that mentor kind of guru type membership, is a youpreneur without a shadow of a doubt. Yeah. So it's perfect for people like small business owners, entrepreneurs, coaches, consultants, speakers, authors, content creators, the whole kit and caboodle. Anybody really focusing around them, their experience, and what they're doing. So that's what a youpreneur is. The book is ultimately the manual on how to build that youpreneurial business model. It's broken up into 3 completely different sections. The first one is building, then there's marketing, and then there's monetizing. So, obviously, if you've already built up an online platform already and you've got a little bit of a following already, hell, skip the first 75 pages. Time is our most valuable commodity. Go straight on to learning how to spread your reach and start monetizing. You know what I mean? But, some of the early feedback that I got from the book, or rather from people who we gave the book to at the event, was saying to me that they kind of feel like this is like the Bible of personal brand business. And when you start hearing words like that, I mean, you're obviously very proud of it. So I'm very, very happy with this. I'll go out on the limb here. I'll go on record to say that I think this might be my last kind of business manual type of book. I'm not saying last book. I'm not saying last business book. But, this is the second kind of how-to guide that I've written. Obviously, the first one being Virtual Freedom. And as you know, as somebody who's not only obviously been a great inspiration to me in regards to the membership side of the youpreneur brand, but also somebody who's become a good friend over the last couple of years, this is my next 10, 15 years. I'm not messing around with this. So, this is, for me, I believe this is actually, when everything's said and done and I look back and I'm sort of, sitting in my house, twiddling my thumbs all day, once I retire, I think that I think this will ultimately end up being, quote unquote, my life's work. And so, there's a lot more that we've got planned. And I believe the book is going to sit very, very, very comfortably in the middle of the entire ecosystem that we're building out.
Yeah, and it's very much, when you talk about the youpreneur, and we've, on past shows, spoke a little bit about where that brand and where that term came from. But, essentially it's you. I suppose the first youpreneur to rise was you. It's about building that business where you are the central attraction to it. It's
yeah, or you're at least center to the business, you are front and center to it. And I mean, the perfect example actually is one of my businesses, which is Virtual Staff Finder. When we launched that business, I already had a personal brand as a VA/outsourcing expert. So what we did is we built that business based around me and my personal brand and my influence within that industry. Now you fast forward a few years later, and I'm hardly involved with the business. My face and name is not on the website anymore. And it kind of just runs on its own because it's its own brand now. It doesn't need me to be out there talking about it and pushing it all the time. But, with something like a personal brand business model where you are ultimately selling in some way, shape or form your experience and your personality, for me, that's future-proofing your business right there, regardless of changes or, referendums or presidents or anything else out there. The fact is that if you are dead centered to your business and you control what happens within it and around it, then you ultimately future-proof yourself. And that's a very exciting prospect,
Yeah, for sure. And as you mentioned before, that is for the majority of our audience, that is what they're doing with their memberships. There's obviously all sorts of different types of membership models, but predominantly, at least within our audience, those memberships are based around someone who is the go-to person. They are the expert. They are, as you say, that kind of central point to their business. So, I think not only obviously is it a very relevant book to that audience, but it's also quite interesting, hopefully, for our listeners. Otherwise, this is going to suck as an episode. But it's hopefully quite interesting looking at it from the perspective of the fact that you are yourself a membership site owner. So, it's kind of like we have with Member Site Academy. The stuff that you learn from the product itself in the way that, look at Rise of the Youpreneur and the stuff that it teaches and talks through and the case studies and stuff, you can learn from that. But also you can look at that broader picture of Chris Ducker, membership site owner, and how that book actually ties in to your whole ecosystem. So, you mentioned Virtual Freedom, which was a bestseller. I'm sure Rise of the Youpreneur, if it's not already by the time this episode goes out, it'll be undoubtedly bestseller too. Unlike Virtual Freedom, though, this book does tie directly into your membership, youpreneur.com. What does Rise of the Youpreneur mean for your ecosystem, where your membership, your conference, your public speaking career, masterminding, all of that sort of stuff, as this is all now kind of really expanding and solidifying around this Youpreneur brand? What does the book do to that picture for you?
It's the front door, for me, in terms of a much, much, much broader audience. And I want to make something very clear as well. The first instance of Youpreneur was the membership. Okay, everything else that's happened with this brand has come about because of that initial business model of the membership. And so, to give you a bit of a timeline here, and it might be interesting for some of your listeners to understand how this has grown over the time since we've launched. So we launched September 2015. We did an event in May 2016, which was about 50 or 60 people in London, little mastermind event.
I was
90-odd percent. You were indeed. 90-odd percent of the people that were there were Youpreneur members. The other 10% that weren't were by the time the event was over and done with. Okay, so we were obviously growing the membership by putting on the live little mastermind. Now, it was also out of that event, and you were there, you will remember me asking the question very clearly. If I put on a big event here in London, would you lot come along to it? At some point in the future, would I do it? And everybody basically said, yes, we would come. So I validated the idea of doing a big conference based off of a small mastermind group, which was based off of the membership. All right. So now we fast forward and I can see the sales coming in for the conference. And I can see everything that's going on inside of the membership and the wins that people are experiencing. And I'm having conversations and I'm talking and I'm making notes and I'm looking at our own roadmap, which was inspired by your roadmap, as you know. And I'm looking at what's working and what's not there. We're always fine-tuning it and tweaking it, obviously, based on our internal content and all that kind of stuff. And before I know what's happening, oh my good God, I've got a book. This is a book. A book is about to be written, and I had no idea it was going to happen. So I mean, I realistically started writing that book in January 2017, and we had it done and dusted in terms of the manuscript around end of July. We edited in August, and then we went to full-blown kind of design mode going into September, just 2 months before the live event, the conference, the summit was supposed to take place. So then I turn around and I say to myself, wouldn't it be cool to get everybody at this event a copy of the book and just gift it to them, just give them it. And we worked our asses off to make it happen. I tell you, I didn't know, it was literally 2 days or something before the event that I knew the book was going to be there. It was really, really down to the wire. And so, it just, what better time to give out a copy of your book than when you've got an audience that are your tribe and are at a live event just soaking this content up to begin with. So it just worked out very, very well. But I wanted to point out that, everything came from the membership. So the membership is still as integral of a part of the entire ecosystem as it ever has been and probably ever will be, quite frankly. But the book now becomes the front door, like I said.
Yeah, and I love that. It's obviously capitalizing and leveraging the fact that through the membership, you've got that core group of Youpreneur fans who, through the membership, have built that stronger connection with you. They've become attached to that Youpreneur brand, and then ramping that up through the live events, and then really smashing it home through the summit, and then through the book. And that kind of staged evolution, do you think you would have been able to do that if maybe the timing was the other way around? Because you see people where they'll want to write their magnum opus and then spin off stuff from that. Then they'll do an event, then they'll take the recordings from the event and they'll create an info product like a membership. Do you think it would have worked, or do you either work just in terms of like theoretically, or do you think you would have wanted to stick with it? Would you want to do it that way?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think, ultimately, would it have been doable? Yes, obviously, because plenty of people have done it. But that being said, I'm almost 100% sure that if I hadn't have had the membership in place for a good, 18 months or so, I think, before I started writing the book or thereabouts, I don't think the book would have been as strong as it is, quite frankly, because of everything that we had picked up and kind of tested and validated over that time. We knew, I look at this book and what am I at? Let me pick up the copy. Hold on. We are at, including the little index of terms. We didn't do a full index, just a couple of pages of main terms. We're at 268 pages. Now, I am 100% sure that those 268 pages are the absolute best at this moment in time, the absolute best 268 pages I could have put into a book of this nature at this time. Now, we might expand on it. We might update it at some point in the future. That's the joys of independently or self-publishing. We can do that. Certainly no plans at the moment, but I truly believe, man, that the book would not have been as good as it is if we'd have done it first.
Yeah.
Right. I think it would have been a whole different kind of vibe to the book. And not to mention the fact that, there's a whole bunch of case studies in the book to prove that this is a business model that works and can make money from the Youpreneur community, from the membership. So, it just goes to show you.
Yeah, and without doubt, some of those case studies and stories that have been spun out of your community, not just from Youpreneur members, but also there's other influencers and relationships you've built up, even if it's just in examples and stuff like that. Like, how big a help has it been? Like, how much of a game changer, thinking back to the process that you went through with Virtual Freedom? In what ways did your book writing process change by having that community to tap in?
Honestly, other than giving me all the inspiration I really needed to write the book and get the ultimate content clean in my head before I actually sort of sat down and started putting the chapter ideas together and everything, probably not much, if I'm to be very honest with you. But that being said, though, obviously it certainly helped me get to the point where I knew what my book was going to look like a lot quicker than what I did with Virtual Freedom, where, you've got 10 years experience in an industry with Virtual Freedom. And I was like, well, I'm just going to talk about everything I know. Let's write a book with 200,000 pages. You know what I mean? It's kind of mad. So it took us a lot longer with Virtual Freedom to kind of get down to the real nuts and bolts of the book and what it was going to end up looking like. With this, it was a lot easier, a lot faster, quite frankly, a lot shorter space of time to kind of figure out exactly what the content, what the chapter breakdown was going to be, what we were going to cover, what we were not going to, because the community fundamentally dictated what the book, or actually, let me say this, the membership dictated what the book must have been like for it to work. And that's the thing. That's the big thing. Now, in terms of the writing process, as you've asked, a lot more different. Because with Virtual Freedom, I literally tapped out every single word of that book on my keyboard. And I promised myself, after I almost killed myself writing that first book, that I was never going to write a book like that ever again. So with Rise of the Youpreneur, the reason why we were able to knock it out in a matter of like 4 or 5 months is because I worked with an editor who interviewed me for 12 hours and just got every single little story and every tidbit and every bit of ad-libbing and every kind of duckerism, as he started calling them, out of me. We transcribed all those calls, and then we started to work on them together, to rework them into kind of like a book format sort of thing. So that cut the writing process down by probably 50%, just having that head start. It wasn't cheap. I worked with somebody who knew what they were doing, but definitely it enabled us to not only get the book out to market quicker, but it enabled us to get the book out and at the summit, which I think was really key for the launch of the book. And now we've got all this great video footage. I just literally today, and obviously we're recording this in a little bit in advance of when this will go live, but I just literally today got the first draft of the book trailer back from my editor. And I'm not going to kind of spoil it or anything because I bloody love it. But, towards the end of it, you get to see some of this footage of the kind of surprise book signing that we did at the event. And it's great. Yeah. And it was worth writing the book and putting the event on just to get that 15 seconds of B-roll for this book trailer. You know what I mean? I mean,
that reaction, honestly, like I think that was possibly the biggest reaction when you actually said, and everyone in the room gets this copy of the book early for free. Like that was a bigger reaction than I think any of the speakers may have got. And you had heavyweight, and in my case, not just on literally, but you had heavyweight speakers up there. And that reaction, man, there was a lot of buzz from that moment carrying through to the signing and the kind of the social gathering that kind of spun off from that. Like that was, it's good that you managed to turn that out. And I remember speaking to you before the event and kind of saying, so am I going to get a copy of your book, like an advanced copy? It's like, I don't know. It's like, no, can I have a copy? It's like, I literally don't know. We don't know if they're going to be able to print them in time. So
it was right down to the wire. And I'll tell you what, there was actually a printing error on those books. And I guess this makes them very, very collectable, very limited.
Mine's
edition
going on
books.
eBay now. Now I know that. Yeah.
If you look, good luck with that. If you look very, very closely at the spine of the book, right at the bottom of the spine, it is missing our imprint. And me and Mike are on camera right now, so I'm going to hold up the book and show him the little imprint logo at the bottom of the spine of the book. Okay. Yeah. Now that is actually missing on the hardcover edition that was printed. And we couldn't quite figure out why the imprint logo didn't print, because it was on the artwork. So there you go. A little bit of tidbit. I think that's literally the first time I've mentioned that. I think it's literally the first time I mentioned it. So bit of collectible edition there Mr. M.
Yeah, I don't think it's a big enough mistake for it to fetch anything on eBay, to be honest. So maybe I'll take that listing down.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm on video. I'll hold them up. You see what I mean?
Like it. Yeah.
Go. Anyway, for you guys listening in, sorry about that.
Yeah, it's all right. I misspelled my own name on the very first draft copy of my book back in 2012. So, yeah. It didn't go out publicly though, so that's all right.
Good.
Now, obviously, we mentioned kind of tapping into your member base to get their stories, testimonials. Obviously, there's some great case studies inside the book. Did you find that? Did you have any kind of challenges with that? Because sometimes it can be a little easier said than done to actually get people motivated to take the time to write this stuff. Quite often if you ask, I'm going to be doing this thing, if you can contribute, people will be like, yeah, definitely, without question, you can count on me. But when it actually comes to it, and I certainly know from experience, it can be a bit like pushing water up a hill. How was that for you? How did you motivate those guys?
It was, it was actually harder for me to come up with a short list of people that I wanted to include in the book, rather than collecting the the kind of the feedback, the bits and pieces that they needed to fill out. I did make it very, very clear in the email correspondence with people that if they didn't get it back to me by a certain date, that they were going to lose their spot in the book. I wasn't going to remind them. I wasn't going to chase them up. This is the date. If you want to be included, go ahead and make sure you get it back to me in good time. If you don't, you'll lose your space in the book, and I'll go with somebody else. And I'm very happy to say that every single person that I invited to be featured in the book showed up, and every single person sent it through within good time. So maybe I lucked out a little bit, but we'll never know. You know what I mean? That's the mystery of book writing. But for sure, though, it was really hard, though, man. It was tough for me to whittle that down to that list.
Yeah.
Because I had to include some influencer types in there to sort of show the bigger picture of what's possible. And obviously, I can't write a book of 100,000 words. Unless you're Tim Ferriss, maybe you can get away with selling a brick. But I mean, I was quite conscious of that. So it was hard for me to actually whittle it down to the 6 or 7 people that ended up coming directly from the community.
Yeah.
But I know for a fact, and I understand this at this point, except for what we sold over the last 48 hours since the book has gone live, the only copies of the book that have been out in the world were that almost 400 copies that we gave out in London in November. And I know for a fact that there are people that were featured in the book that have gotten business out of the fact that they were in the book. So people who were actually at the summit are now doing business with each other as a direct result. So that's pretty cool.
That is very cool. You do realize now, though, you're going to be inundated if you do decide to write another book, because people are like, well, I want a piece of that action.
Some of that.
Yeah. It's always tricky, though. I kind of feel, obviously, if you're trying to pick people to feature in something like a book, which is obviously different from just trying to get people to give you testimonials and stuff. This is something where they're going to get a bit of exposure and a bit of a rub, essentially, from the fact that, they've been picked. But when you're doing that, when you're choosing people, again, like Youpreneur Summit, there were a few kind of Youpreneur member spotlight sessions where you pull up some of the Youpreneur members with great stories to tell, great success to share and stuff like that. On top of that, I know you kind of pick out some Youpreneur members to have workshops and stuff done inside the membership. Do you get any sort of kickback from that, or do you ever? Is there ever an issue with people kind of feeling like they've been overlooked, or maybe taking offense to the fact, well, hold on, this person, we're in the same industry and they've been picked to be spotlighted here, and what about me? Do you worry about that at all? Do you have a way of dealing with that?
Is it just... No, I don't really worry about it all that much, if I'm to be really honest. I'm quite vocal with my kind of, I guess my kind of, should we say, selection process and what goes through. Like, if you work your ass off and take tons of action and get great results, I'm going to highlight you.
Yeah.
It's that simple. If you don't, then I won't. It's that simple. I mean, we look at Ramona Rice, who won the first ever. She was the first ever recipient of the Youpreneur of the Year award, which I really wanted to do that at the end of 2016 as kind of like a big announcement for the community. But one of my staff members turned around and said to me, boss, you can't do it. You got to hold it off for the conference.
Yeah.
And then you just do it at the conference every year. And I'm glad she did, because it was an incredibly proud moment for me personally to hand that trophy, or that little award that we had for Ramona, over to her. But it actually got quite emotional because of her story and what she's gone through. And I think it was a great way for people in attendance that weren't members of the membership to actually see just how important the members are to me as the founder, So it did great for my, for our membership drive during and after the event as well. And I think all in, we had like an extra 85 or so people join, within a week of the event taking place, which is great.
Yeah, and I think, that kind of really underpins what we were saying before about the order in which you've kind of built out this ecosystem, because without that, you don't have those moments. It's just like any other conference. But the fact that you have that community, you have those people you can bring up onto stage, which of course for someone in the audience, quite often you go to these big conferences and you feel so far away from the people that you see up on stage. But actually being able to see people and hear their stories, and maybe you've never heard of them before, but they're doing great things and they're still in their journey, like that you don't get at a lot of events. And same as within books, you read books by experts and gurus and all of that, and quite often the stories they're telling, it's their similarly leveled friends. So it's, again, you don't have that connection. Whereas actually, if you're reading about people essentially just like you, maybe they're a year further on in their story or what have you, like you wouldn't get that without having that membership community first to then be able to tap into and create those kind of moments and those little connections and stuff there. Yeah.
And I mean, this is all part of, the bigger Youpreneur ecosystem master plan. It's we've still got more to add to it all. There's certainly plans for some digital courses. There's certainly plans, obviously, for other smaller live events to kind of feed the fire when people need it through the year, not keep them waiting for an entire 12 months. And there's one particular part of the ecosystem that I'm keeping very much private and under my belt. I don't mind telling you off line, but for you guys tuning in, sorry, it's a secret. But that particular one is something, that realistically is probably 2-3 years away, but it just goes to show you what's possible from starting out as just a little membership community and how we've built it up. I'm very, 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 very proud of what we've achieved in such a short space of time. And hell, we're just getting started, Mike. We're just getting going.
Love it. And I think as well, what people really need to be able to take away from that is the fact that this whole thing, this online business thing, whether it is a membership, whether it's courses you're selling, whether you're just trying to figure out how to move from doing coaching to doing something online, it's an evolution. You mentioned earlier that the book kind of just formed itself on the back of what was going on in the membership. That wasn't a thing that you had to have in place alongside your membership and alongside plans for your event from day one. These things grow and evolve over time. So I think sometimes people put so much pressure on themselves to have that fully completed big picture right from the get-go, when actually you can't do it. It's a long game.
You got to play the long game. You have to play the long game. I use that term all the time because if you're not planning 2-3 years ahead, I'll tell you something right now, one of your competitors is. You're going to get left behind, So I'm a big believer of the long game approach to business, particularly in sales and marketing. I'm blessed to come from a very kind of old school sales background, and the whole kind of always be closing and all that kind of stuff, and that that was my kind of initial kind of my initial kind of foray into the sales world, but it served me very, very well, and it hasn't hurt me at all. But I can tell you something right now: all of the businesses I've started and grown and still to this day own and operate. See, this is the thing as well. Youpreneur is what I work on every single day. Okay, whereas my other businesses, which collectively make me a multi-7-figure annual revenue, I hardly spend any time at all on in any way, shape, or form. I could remove them tomorrow. It wouldn't affect my workflow in any way whatsoever. And quite frankly, because now the Youpreneur brand is really growing in the way that I need it to grow in all the different facets, I wouldn't really miss the money all that much, because I know I'm only a couple of years away from doing the same sort of cash with just one business model compared to just 2 or 3 combined. And so, I think that it's the big realization for me, Mike, is that I have realized that every business I've ever grown or been involved with in the past, people did business with me a long time before they ever did business with the companies.
Yeah.
And that's personal branding on steroids right there. And once you make that realization, sky's the limit, literally, because once you're in that mindset of saying, no matter what happens in the future, no matter what varying interests I might have or different industries I might pass, my core customers will come with me because of me. Yeah, because I'm their favorite whatever. And that's huge. I mean, that's like, Popeye spinach stuff we're talking about. Like that's a superpower,
Love that. I'm going to have Popeye the Sailor Man stuck in my head now for the next
Sorry about that.
24 hours. Awesome.
I'd gladly pay you $2 for a hamburger. Gladly. Yeah.
Love it. Every time I see Matthew Kimberley on like Instagram, because he's based out of Malta, isn't he? And that's where Popeye's Village was. That's where they filmed the Popeye movie. So every single time that song goes through my head, Popeye the Sailor. Yeah. Anyway.
Unfollow him.
Yeah. We kind of joked at the beginning that this is your 3rd time round here on the podcast, but those 3 episodes, I think I was thinking about this before we hit record. Actually, they make for a pretty killer case study, because when we first spoke on the show, it was almost 2 years ago to the day. I checked this. Our first episode was 24th of Feb, 2016. This is going out 21st of Feb, 2018. So almost 2 years ago. And back in that first episode, and we'll link to these in the show notes, we were talking about what you were doing with Youpreneur. I think the membership had been open for 4 or 5 months. And we were talking about, how you were planning on making Youpreneur a global brand, and obviously how other membership site owners could do the same thing. So that was just a few months after your membership opened. Then our second interview back in June, you were gearing up for the first conference. So we're talking about where that fit into everything and how that's evolved from the membership. And then here we are talking about another key piece of the Youpreneur puzzle. So it's a fascinating little case study. But my question is, what are we talking about next time? What's the next thing on the horizon for the Youpreneur brand? Right.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see.
Is that the thing that's under the hat?
Well, I'd like to think that I wouldn't have to wait 2-3 years to be back on the show, Mike. But I think that
it depends. It depends on what people think of your performance this time.
Yeah,
got to keep the public happy.
I think that there's. Look, the one thing I love about the online business game is it changes very, very quickly. You never really know what's around the corner at the end of the day. I don't mind going on the record and saying that I've never really truly been happy with the level of the number of members, active members. I mean, we've had we've had probably close to, 1,200 people probably join. And we're at sort of around about 40% of that number now, give or take. I'm very authentic. I'm very transparent in the way that I talk about my businesses. The only thing I don't talk about is money. I never give, dollar or pound amounts or whatever.
Nobody likes people who talk about money, really.
Not really. No, they want to beat them up. Exactly. So a lot of the time anyway, but I've never really truly felt super satisfied with active member numbers. But I do believe that now that we've got the big flagship event happening every year, and now that we have the book and the reach of a book, if you plan it strategy wise, if you market it properly and you don't give up a month after you launch it, and you've got a good solid machine behind it, a book can build a business. I've seen it over and over and over again. So I think a year from now, when I come back on the show again,
I love that you're booking yourself on the show.
Planting the seed. I would like to say the one thing I'd like to talk about is how the event and how the book, and obviously the funnel behind the book, because there's, little secret URLs in there and giveaways and all that kind of stuff in the book, how those things have helped us ultimately bolster and grow the membership as a core part of the business, because it has to grow. It's the one thing, if you think about it, it's the one thing that truly is super scalable.
Yeah.
Whereas, yes, I can continue to grow the live event a little bit, but eventually it'll hit critical mass and I'll be happy with it. And, who knows what that number is going to be, but eventually we'll hit it. Online courses will sell a certain amount, but it's like anything else. Once you sell a course, you sell the course. It's done. It's a one-time gig. We need that predictable recurring income that every growing business needs. And so I'd like to think that that's what we'll be talking about next time, is how all these little bits and pieces inside of the ecosystem have fundamentally helped to really spearhead the growth of the very thing that started everything off in the first place.
Love that. Love that. Absolutely looking forward to getting you back on the show in the future to catch up on everything that's going on and how that's all come together. In the meantime, I'd absolutely recommend everyone listening check out Rise of the Youpreneur. It truly is a terrific read. That's not just me blowing smoke up your arse. It really is vital reading for anyone building the sort of personal brand, authority-based business that most of us as membership site owners are building. And as membership owners, you'll also appreciate it from that other perspective too, in terms of how it ties into the Youpreneur membership. So get yourself onto Amazon, get yourself to riseoftheyoupreneur.com, grab your copy. And when you do, be sure to tweet at Chris Ducker and at Membership Guys to let him know that we sent you. I don't get any money for it, but the more tweets, the more tweets that he gets, the stronger my argument is when it comes to settling, bar tabs and stuff like that. So, I mean, how many of my book have you helped sell? Next round is on you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love it. Yeah. And I will say just real quick, obviously, I know this is going out, what did you say, Feb 21?
It'll be 21st of Feb. So the book has just come out on Feb 20th, I believe.
20, exactly. So this is good timing then. So right the way through to and including March 6th, if you go to riseoftheyoupreneur.com, you'll see there's a couple of little kind of packages that we put together. If you buy, even just one book, you'll get some bonuses. If you buy a few books and then maybe give them out to your mates or your mastermind group or your members even. I mean, the members would love this as a gift. If you go ahead and do that, we've got up to $700 worth of bonuses available and they're up for grabs. All you got to do is just fire off your receipt to us, and the email address is on that website, riseoftheyoupreneur.com. But those packages, those bonuses will go from March 7 onwards. So you want to buy them before that date to get all those freebies. Everybody loves a freebie, Mike.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm from Newcastle. Like, if it's not free.
you bloody love a freebie. Yeah. You do. Give me that.
So, yeah, absolutely. Head on over riseoftheyoupreneur.com. Get yourself a copy of this. Let Chris know we sent you. And we'll have all these links in the show notes. themembershipguys.com/137. Get yourself over there. Get all the links. Grab a copy of the book. You won't regret it. Chris, as always, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Good luck with the book.
Thank you, my man. You're an inspiration. You played a big part in all of this, and I want to thank you very, very much for it.
Thanks again to Chris for taking the time to come on the show. I know he's had a hectic schedule as he does the rounds promoting Rise of the Youpreneur. And Rise of the Youpreneur is available for purchase now. It is brand spanking new at the time that this episode goes out. So head on over to riseoftheyoupreneur.com to find out how to buy. And if you're listening to this episode before March 6, 2018, then don't be tempted into buying your copy straight away on Amazon. Get yourself to riseoftheyoupreneur.com because Chris has put together some little bonus goodies for anybody who buys one or more copies of the book before March 6, 2018. He's been very smart about this, in that if you decide you want to buy a whole bunch of copies, maybe you want to give some copies to some of your members, run contests and all that sort of stuff, then there's all sorts of incentives and all sorts of bonuses that you're going to get for bulk purchases too. So head over to riseoftheyoupreneur.com. That's it from me for this episode. Thanks again to Chris for coming on the show. Thanks to you for spending part of your day with me and with Chris. Hopefully you've found it useful, and I'll be back again next week with another installment of the Membership Guys podcast. If you've enjoyed today's episode of the Membership Guys podcast, we invite you to check out the membersiteacademy.com. The Member Site Academy is the essential resource for anyone at any stage of starting, growing, and running a membership website. So whether you're still figuring out what your idea is going to be, or whether your website is already up and running and you're just looking for ways to grow it and attract new members, then the Member Site Academy can help you to get to the next level. With our extensive course library, monthly training, exclusive member-only discounts, perks and tools, and a supportive, active community to help you along the way with feedback, encouragement and advice, the Member Site Academy is the perfect place to be for anyone looking to start, manage and grow a successful membership website. So check it out at membersiteacademy.com.